I think we all would like to really understand what's going on in Washington, D.C., with members of Congress, with the U.S. military. To help us better understand that, I have General Michael Flynn with me today. General Flynn, thank you so much for joining me.
Appreciate it, Stephen, and it's great to be back on with you and your audience.
So, wanted to come right out of the gates. Is there any doubt in your mind that the deep state and Democrats will do anything they can to keep Donald J. Trump out of the White House?
Yeah, I mean, I think people need to realize, for those that are just now waking up, and I know your audience has been well served by you and by the messaging that you have been providing for quite a while, since I've really gotten to know you too, that your audience probably realizes the challenges that we are facing. But I want people to understand that tomorrow morning, don't expect the Democrat Party and those in power in the White House right now, this socialist takeover of our country. Don't expect these people to wake up tomorrow and go, you know what? We've been screwing the American people so badly that I think we're gonna lighten up. And yeah, we better probably close the border. We probably ought to get our energy going again. We probably ought to reduce the price of a gallon of gasoline. We probably ought to figure out ways to get out of these wars that we're involved in. Don't expect that whatsoever. We probably ought to lighten up on Donald Trump. We probably ought to maybe just say, we're not going to run these cases anymore. No, these people are going to figure out ways to triple down on what they are already doing to each and every single one of us. And that starts with President Donald J. Trump, who is being persecuted. And boy, do I know what persecution means and feels like. He is being persecuted like no other president in the history of the United States of America has ever been persecuted. And the thing that I want people to understand is Trump is a man, okay? He's a human being. He's got a family. He's a tough guy. And I saw him recently, in fact, the other night, Saturday, and he looks very fit to me. He looks very sharp. He has all of his faculties. He is healthy in terms of his ability to withstand the sheer number of attacks on him personally, on his family, and his ability to go around this country and campaign like you've never seen somebody campaign, to include the guy that's currently occupying the White House, President Biden. I mean, so these people are going to continue this relentless pursuit to destroy this country. And they really started by, in my case, if you just look at recent history, they really started to go after me first. Really, that's probably the first big target. But I think culturally, this has been going on, Stephen, for the last, since the late 60s, it's 1970s, if you want to get into that. I mean, this is a cultural tearing down of America and a reshaping of what America is. And there is no doubt in my mind that these people will continue down this path if we, the people, don't, figure out ways to stand up, get involved in our communities. I've always used this phrase, local action has a national impact, but that means that you, audience, must decide how you're going to get involved. It might be attending school board hearings and saying something. It might be running for office. It might be getting behind a local politician who you like, a local leader who you like, who wants to get into politics, not a local politician, because most of the people in politics right now are a bunch of crooks. So that's an extended answer to your great question, but I want people to understand that this is a time of historical consequence. The primaries that we are going through need everybody to get out and vote, and definitely the general election. We have got to overwhelm the theft that will likely come in November. They will try it again because we really, when we think about changes to our election system, now I'm getting off the subject of your question, but when we think about changes that were clearly necessary that must be done to our election system, it's really only been marginal. It's been on the margins that we've really had any big changes. We still use the mail-in ballots. There's still ballot harvesting. There's still machines. There's still connections to the internet. All these different things, instead of, having what I saw recently in Arizona, where Arizona argued, our Arizona state legislator, plural, they argued to have paper ballots and hand counting done on election day. And I hope that passes. That's still going to be signed by the governor, I understand. But I hope that passes, because maybe that sets an example, or certainly a precedent, for other places in the country that I know are trying to do this, right? We can do this. The American people are smart enough to go and vote in person with an ID, and make sure that it's done correctly, and then to count those ballots. We can count, and we can get many volunteers to get in there to count, and have people there watching and making sure, observing, to make sure that everything's done above board. What is wrong with that, right? Why can't we do that? And to me, that's something that we are going to have to continue to strive to achieve, because if we don't have fair elections, we don't have a republic. Our constitutional republic is gone if we don't have fair elections. And we cannot afford, this country cannot afford to go through another presidential election where the outcome is unknown for weeks, and where we're arguing back in courts and this thing they call lawfare. If we are back in a place like that, we've lost. America has lost. You, Stephen, who are young enough to be my son, and any people that are young enough to be my grandkids, and I have my own grandkids, their future will be at risk.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that they're going to double down, triple down. They're not just going to wake up and take their foot off the gas against Trump and against conservative values. What scares me is Nancy Pelosi just did an interview where they said, don't you think Donald Trump has a chance? So many people like him. And she said, well, a few of us in DC know that it's impossible for him to win. She used the word impossible with so much conviction that it's scary, almost like she knows how to rig the system, get the media to go against Trump, get DC to get their way. To me, that's scary when she says, we know it's impossible for him to win. I don't know if you saw that interview or not, but yeah, they're not going to double down. One thing that I wanted to ask you, General, is you had a lot of experience working with President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden. How different is Joe Biden now from when you served with that presidency? And how dangerous is it to have somebody with such a weak memory and mind guiding the country, the military, and having access to the nuclear football?
Yeah, so people know, like, with my time, even though the short time that I served as the National Security Advisor to President Trump, I was fully read in on the entirety of the nuclear process. Okay. The codes, the football, the process, and the decision making. Because as the National Security Advisor, you're there to advise the President of the United States, in a critical moment in time, right? Also, my background as the senior intelligence officer in the Pentagon, the title is called J2. I was the senior intelligence officer for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I routinely, in many cases, almost daily, would go into the National Military Command Center, where the nuclear system is actually run out of, and that, of course, it's tied into the President of the United States, the Vice President, the head of the intelligence services, the Secretaries of State, the Secretary of Defense, on down, right? And so as a senior intelligence officer, I had people in that room on a daily basis running the exercises and the kinds of things that we do. So I have deep knowledge of this. And I wanted to make sure that your audience understood that I have deep knowledge of this. In order to be able to get that proverbial call at 3 o'clock in the morning, where you don't have to take your whatever your IV shot, or you don't have to, be given an hour to wake up. In order to get that proverbial 3 o'clock in the morning call, you have to have somebody in the executive position of the President of the United States that is so alert, so switched on, so agile in his mind and in his physical abilities. We cannot have somebody like the guy that's in there now. It's a scary proposition. Now that I've said, so it's vastly different than when I served in the military under, where President Obama appointed me twice to really key positions. So it's a different time, different batch of people. And to add a little bit more fuel to the fire of this conversation, and now we have the Secretary of Defense. God knows what his health situation is, or where he's at. Is he back? I guess he's back in Bethesda Naval Hospital with another, and he's basically given up. He's had to give up all of his authorities to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, who, when you look at the Deputy Secretary of Defense's background, these are people, and it's a joke to say when the Biden administration was coming in, and they would tell guys like you, the American people, your audience, that that the pros are now back in charge, right? The real pros that know how to run government are back in charge. Look at the wars that we're involved in. Look at the talk of nuclear warfare coming out of this administration, coming out of the leadership of NATO. I mean, we haven't spoken about nuclear warfare like we've spoken about in the last 50 years. I mean, since really the end of the Cold War for sure, but even during the Cold War, there wouldn't be any conversations about nuclear war like we have now out of NATO and out of this administration. So the adults are not back. The adults are waiting to get back in. And the last thing that I would say about this is that, and this is the issue of and it has to do with the Tucker Carlson interview with Putin the other day that I want to touch on, because this is an important part of this component of warfare and this component of relationships and engagements and how we work on a global stage. So one of the things that was really, I think it should have been shocking to anybody, particularly into your audience and anybody in this country, is that when Tucker asked Putin, when was the last time you talked to Joe Biden? And he said, like 2 years ago, right? It's been like 2 years since he talked to him. And I said, holy crap, man. We used to have, and I was in the Pentagon when we had it. We used to have the old hotline, right, to Russia. And I actually set up phone calls between the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and his counterpart in Russia. I set those up. That was my responsibility, to set those phone calls up, to have the interpreters in the room, to have the note takers, to do all the kinds of things you do when a very senior person in the United States government is going to talk to a very senior person in another government. And in this case, it was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs talking to his equivalent in Russia. And we did that more often than not. We did that a couple of times for specific reasons. And we did that because what you want to do at the right level in government is you want to keep tensions down, right? You want to keep relationships open. You want to keep the lines of communications open. And Putin is going to tell us, I mean, and then now we know it's true, that he has not had conversations with Joe Biden in almost 2 years. This is insane. This is what should scare every American. This is what should be the reason. I mean, among many others, this should be a reason to get this guy out of the White House and to get somebody else in charge for the time being. And then also we need to bring in a guy like President Donald J. Trump into the White House to be able to get the country back on the rails. Because right now, the United States of America, as to use it as a metaphor, as a train, we are off the rails. And the guy that's in charge of us, you don't know whether he actually knows what he's doing or not. And I hate to talk like that, but it's not like we're hiding something. I mean, this is obvious, and he makes it more obvious by his own actions. And frankly, the people that are around him, that are around the president of the United States, that are allowing him to engage publicly like he's been engaging, it's almost sad, and I feel sad for this man. And I feel a sense of, I don't want to say anger, because I don't get angry about stuff, but I definitely feel a sense of I don't know, just I'm really perturbed, I guess, about the family around Biden and the fact that his wife, she's got to know that this guy's got problems. I mean, even during the Putin interview with Tucker, and the other night when Biden came out to do the press conference to talk about the special counsel Hur's investigation, he still screwed up. He couldn't even get that right. And one last thing on that. There's no way in the world that his team should have allowed him to go out in front of and do a public press conference like that. No way. What they should have done was they should have had him sit behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, give a statement to the public about whatever it was that he wanted to say, and then that was the end of it. No questions, and no, we wouldn't be talking about it. I would not be talking about it right now. The media is still upset with how he responded to them because he refused to answer questions. And then when he did stop for a second to answer a question, what did he do? He got angry. He got angry, and then of course he screwed up with talking about the President El-Sisi of Egypt, addressing him as the president of Mexico. I mean, we're in a really, really strange time in the United States of America, and from my perspective, as a military officer, as a guy who has studied our history, as a guy who has studied world history, as a person who is a designated strategist by our own government, and has a very, very blessed background, we are in a period of historic consequence that the United States has never been in. And if people in this country don't figure out what to do at the local level, then we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. Americans can't sit this one out. Everybody's got to join in on this particular election, and that includes the primaries too. We're in the primaries, and primary turnout is like 35-40%. That's terrible, Stephen. It's terrible. Okay, we have to have turnout that's like 75, 80, 85%. I'd love to think we're going to have turnout that's 100%, but it just doesn't happen that way in America for some reason. This coming election, this coming presidential election, well, there's your reason to get out and vote.
Yeah. One of the things that stood out most to me from the Tucker Carlson, Vladimir Putin interview was Putin said, doesn't America have better things to do than try to fight us through Ukraine? You're $34 trillion in debt. You have a border crisis, and nobody knows who's really running the country. Those things, I mean, Russia is paying attention to us. China is watching us. The whole world is watching what's going on, and that's incredibly scary. I'm sure you saw that basically in the middle of the night, the early morning Washington, D.C. hours, they just passed this $95 billion spending bill to send like $61 billion to Ukraine, 14 or 15,000 to Israel, some to Taiwan. No money for the American people. No money to fix the Texas border crisis. And what are we doing? What is going on with this bill? I feel like, how on earth did we have over 20 Republicans say, you know what? Screw the Texas border, screw the American people, screw our veterans, screw our senior citizens, screw the children who are being taken out of school so illegals can sleep at schools. What, in your estimation, what is going on in Congress with these bills?
Yeah. Here's where I stand, and this is very blunt. I think every single politician, when they go back home, so this is to your audience, when your politicians go back home and they're seeking reelection and they're standing in front of some, at some school hall or some church hall or out in a parking lot or they have some rally, people ought to be screaming at them, we want to see where the money that you're getting goes. And I will tell you, every politician is supposed to have a document that they disclose all of their income. Okay, I had to do it when I went into government. I had to do it as a flag officer. to get a security clearance. You got to do it when you go into government. You're supposed to disclose all of your earnings, where your money's come from, all that kind of stuff, right? And to me, when we start to look at the various industries that surround Washington, D.C., that are benefiting from that bill and many other bills, that money, those you can call them lobbyists or whatever, but those industries are forcing our politicians to do their bidding. And that money, because what's going to happen with $61 billion? That money's going to, it looks on paper like it's going to go to Ukraine, right? If some amount of that's going to go to Ukraine. What's going to happen is it's going to circle its way right back here to the United States of America, and it's going to find its way right into somebody's pocket, okay? And there's going to be big contracts that people are going to get. I mean, we have so many problems right now at home. One of the problems that we do have is our own military readiness levels, right? Or lack of readiness. I mean, we need training, we need sustainment, we need ammunition, we need new weapon systems, we need all these things to be able to take care of wars that we might have to fight. We need a restocking of certain things, but that doesn't mean that we'll get that if we spend billions of dollars overseas. That money that's going overseas, we might as well take that bill, put it into a bathtub, dump a big thing of gasoline on it, and light it on fire, because it's worthless. It's absolutely worthless. It's more money that's being drained from the coffers of the United States of America. And yet, we have yet to hear from President Biden any objectives for why we're even there. He has not stated, he's not come out in a State of the Union. He has not come out in an address from the Oval Office. He has not once stated in a clear, unadulterated fashion what the objectives are for the war in Ukraine. He has yet to do the exact same thing for what we're doing in the Middle East. Do you know, I think I saw a crazy number now. In fact, I'll make sure I get it right, but the number that I saw of U.S. forces that have been hit since this, we have 100, here it is right here. So the U.S. Department of Defense has announced that since October 7th, massacre by Hamas in southern Israel, attacks by Iranian-backed groups against U.S. forces, we now have 186 American casualties from Iranian-backed forces, in the Middle East. And this president has not stated once, not once, what the objectives are of what we're trying to achieve. So people are going to get injured and they're going to get killed. And we know that we've lost at least 3 casualties. So we're going to lose soldiers for things that clearly those soldiers don't understand what it is that they're doing over there, other than they're ordered to be over there because they volunteered to serve. And God love and God pray for, we need to pray for these men and women that are serving in our armed forces, because they're being led by fools. And I mean it. And I mean fools, not only political fools on the civilian leadership that we have, but also some in our military ranks, because there's no way in the world that our military leaders in uniform, and I'm talking to the principally the 4 stars right now, that for them to sit there and say, oh yeah, everything's okay, everything's fine, this is just great how we're running things, and not questioning their leadership, and in some cases to say, look, if this has to continue this way, I can't serve in this. I can't serve here. I mean, I got into my own hot water while I was serving in the military, because when I was asked for my judgment on something, I gave him my very expert, very long, many, many years of experience doing this stuff. I gave him my honest judgment. And by giving him my honest judgment, I was let go a year early from my last assignment. And I was fine with that. I can live with that. I can live with that, because I know I was doing the right thing, which is what I was trained to do, right? I was trained to follow, that the Constitution. I was trained as a leader to basically give my best judgment when I was asked, and not some bullshit that some of these people are out there feeding. And there's no way in the world that the Secretary of State Blinken can look at the operations going on in the Middle East and say, oh yeah, everything's wonderful. If we have 186 casualties right now since the 7th of October, I mean, under President Trump, he didn't have one casualty, not one casualty. I think it was in like the last 18 months, because he told the enemies, you do this, I'm going to do that, right? You go after an American, I'm going to come after your home, right? I mean, there has to be a consequence. Ronald Reagan, when the Iranian Navy tried to shut down the Persian Gulf, the Straits of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf and the flow of energy in the Middle East coming out of the Persian Gulf. And they did it in a very, they took stupid actions. They took military actions. What did Ronald Reagan do? He destroyed 50% of the Iranian Navy at that time. 50%. He destroyed it. And for the people that are laughing about that, going, well, that means he only blew up one ship because they only had two. No, he got rid of a lot of capabilities of Iran. And you know what Iran did? Iran backed down in a big way, and they didn't rise their ugly heads, for a long time. Now Iran is and they're backed, militias and forces. They're going after American forces left and right, and all we're doing is we're pouring money right into Gaza. We're pouring money right into Iran. I mean, how stupid! It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm on my high horse right now, but I am, because we're stupid. We're being stupid. We're foolish. The adults are not in charge, and God help us that we can get to an election in November without any big problems, any big disease X's or World War III's in a much bigger way, because we're in World War III right now. I hope that we can get to the November election and we can, elect a leader and other leaders and get rid of some of these bums in Washington who are continuing to vote for this foolishness. I mean, our country is like, it's on fire, and yet we're sitting here going, oh yeah, these idiot politicians are going, oh yeah, we're going to vote for. Now I give credit to those that went against it. Good for them. But the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, I'm going to take a hard look this evening and kind of look at his statements and where, what direction is he leading us? Because the Speaker of the House has the authority to shut the government down. He can turn the spigots of money off. He has the authority to be able to do that, and the power if he uses it smartly. And why not? I mean, at this stage, it can't hurt. I mean, shutting Washington, D.C. down might actually help for a little while. So anyway, boy, you got me going, Stephen.
You've got a new movie coming out. I'm going to queue up and roll a clip of that so that people can see it. But
sound's rolling. All three cameras. We're good.
Is there any regrets that you have in life? I should sit here and say, yeah, I got a lot of regrets. But when I look back on my life and I understand the lives that were lost, I mean, I'm sitting here with you. And I can tell my story.
Former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
He was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
Brilliant military career, serving 33 years.
Why was he being so elusive?
Mike Flynn told the truth and faced life in prison.
just our last couple minutes here. Why did you make this movie? And then I'll leave a link down below so that people can watch it.
Yeah, thank you very much. They can go to flynnmovie.com. I made the movie to tell my story. And with the movie, I'm also writing a book, and the book will be out probably in another 30 days. The movie will be out in April timeframe. I wanted to be able to, in as crisp a way to do it. You know, it's a very complex story, but I wanted to tell my story from my point of view, so people actually heard it, because I've been on many podcasts, you know, since since 2020. And there's been a lot of, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad out there. A lot of people that, that attack me constantly because they think they know what I'm thinking, So this is my story. My family is a big, big part of this story. And that's the one strength, as well as my faith, that got us through the many years of persecution. And in many cases, Stephen, that persecution continues.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your service to our country. I want to thank your family for their sacrifice. And I want to thank you for coming on the show today. I'll make sure to put that link down below so that people can go sign up for when that comes out. Best of luck with the book. And I appreciate you coming on. Have a great rest of your day.
God bless, Stephen. Thank you.